ways, okay? And so there is, according to Scripture, support for that. But does that necessarily mean that, it's like God withdrawing his hand and the animals became carnivorous? I don't know that that's exactly what that means. It might mean something else. I'm not sure. But I hear creationist arguments that T-Rex could have been a plant eater, and one of the evidences they put forth for that is that T-Rex's teeth are not actually rooted very deeply in its gums, only about 2 inches. And I'm talking about teeth as long as the palm of your hand, but they're only rooted into the gums about 2 inches. There is rationale in believing that if an animal had teeth like that and it was carnivorous, it would literally rip its teeth out trying to eat a triceratops or something, because the skin on these dinosaurs was probably the toughest skin that ever existed on any animal, right? So, I mean, it would seem rational that these things would rip their own teeth out. That makes sense. So there's some sense to that creationist argument about some carnivorous creatures, their teeth are not suited for it. But on the other hand, then there's dogs and cats. Their teeth are well suited for carnivorous attacking other animals. A dog, you're not going to pull a dog's teeth out. If he bites you, he's going to rip your flesh. You're not going to move his teeth, right? They're too strong in the gums. So, it could go both ways. Sharks lose teeth when they bite things, but they grow them back real fast. They grow forward in a row. But so the shark is designed to lose teeth, and grow them right back. So I don't really have the definitive answer about that. I think that the environmental change from the flood caused pressures upon animals that may have partially responsible for the change in their behavior, if there has actually been change.
Can I just come in there? I said the question back to front. Now, well, in the Noah story, after the ark, when they landed on the mountain, God gave the creatures meat to eat after that. But now, if you look in Genesis, where it says about the plants, and then it says they are from meat and things like that. Now, the way I've looked at that is that it was just highlighting about the plants. It was just highlighting about the plants because it was leading up to the story of eating off the tree. So I'm inclined to think that animals were eating meat even before then. From the very creation, they were eating meat, just like the whales were eating krill and things like that. So that is a possibility that people are misinterpreting them scriptures, and where animals were actually eating the meat, but it was just mentioned about the plants being given as meat because it was highlighting the tree.
Yeah, that's possible, but also, see, this is the things that help me not have a definitive opinion about. Consider animals like the emerald cockroach wasp, which is to me a clear example of intelligent design. It's an animal that it does a series of I won't go into it. It'd take me 7 minutes to explain, but does a marvelous series completes a marvelous series of actions in order to reproduce. Okay, and it seems irreducible. It couldn't fail at any one step, else the roach, the wasp species would go extinct. It uses a roach for a host for its egg, and this embryo, as it develops inside the roach, eats the entrails of the roach in exactly the right pattern so as the roach will stay alive for exactly 8 days. Not one day less, not one day more, exactly 8 days. And that's how long it takes for that thing to turn into a fully grown baby emerald cockroach wasp and then exit the body of the thing with wings fully developed. Okay, so I don't see how a creature like that could exist because the process seems irreducibly complex. It seems to me that God designed the animal to require that symbiotic or parasitic relationship to survive. So if that be the case, then you're talking about an animal that's eating flesh, because the embryo, the larvae of that wasp requires the entrails of a roach to survive. So that kind of throws a cog in the wheel of the idea for me that animals did not eat meat prior to the flood. I don't know. I still have never really completely got figured that out. I would like to absolutely know for sure the answer to that question, and I can't honestly say I do.
I mean, and you've also got animals being camouflaged to protect themselves from other predators, and so you've got that to consider as well within it.
Yeah, camouflage. Yeah, that's true. Mimicry and such. It defies evolution, by the way, especially with creatures like octopus. What they can do, it's absolutely astounding. I mean, they can just mimic a rock covered with algae. You can't even tell it's not a rock with algae until you get right on it and it blows ink at you and runs away, swims away. It's just amazing. I see that as a marvelous example of intelligent design that completely refutes evolution theory. But I don't, like you, I don't see how that could exist unless carnivorous behavior existed already. That seems to be the very point of mimicry.
Yeah, so okay, you've cleared that up for me because I wondered how you sort of thought about. I know you're early Earth creationist, and I wondered how you felt about creatures eating meat before God commanded in the Noah to eat meat and that. So I just wondered how you stood on that. That's all. Thanks very
Yeah.
much for
Hey,
answering.
Neff.
Well, I try to approach everything with complete skepticism. I am very skeptical. I'm one of those persons that I don't swallow something just because somebody tells me. I like to, oh, really? Is that true? And I go investigate, you know. I don't want anything but the truth regarding anything. God, creation, anything. I mean, I don't have any reason to doubt God. I've experienced God. I know God is real. But, I mean, anything in science regarding, creation or evolution, whatnot, I'm skeptical about it. If evolutionists claim the process is really observable, I want to find out if that really is true, and I'll go study what they say about it, and then what the evolutionists say about it, and make up my own mind about it. But I don't just swallow. I'm very much a skeptic, even if it pertains to creationists.
Hey, Neff. I just looked up the whole T-Rex thing. Being a skeptic myself, I think it was the Museum of Creation that put forth the idea that T-Rex was a vegetarian herbivore. Um, no, it's totally false from what I've seen. The teeth that bear the most stress are actually up to 10 inches long, rooting into the nasal area or the nasal cavity area that deep. And answers in Genesis. Okay.
Answers in Genesis.com says the same thing about the T-Rex teeth, that they demonstrate the creature had to be a plant eater. But what you're talking about is the canines of the animal, just the canines, right? The rest of the teeth are not seated deeply in gums, only about 2 inches. See?
The front teeth, I believe, a few of the front teeth, or four or so of the front teeth. I gotta look into it a little bit more. I just skimmed over it, but the teeth that are used for which have the most load on them, which are used to pretty much chomp into the animal and then pull. Like their head is the massive size of their head is it's pretty much perfect for chomping and then shearing off meat.
Yeah,
And
I
the teeth that
understand what
bear
you're saying.
the most load, the teeth that bear the most load are huge, about 10 inches deep at least. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I understand that, but if you look at plant-eating animals, they also have the same characteristic. Their canines are also most deeply rooted in their jaws. Plant-eating animals that don't eat meat at all, and there are animals that, so I mean, that doesn't demonstrate that they ate meat. I mean, look at baboons. They've been known to be carnivorous, but they're typically plant eaters. They're not strictly they're omnivorous. Actually, technically, they will eat meat, but they typically eat fruit and vegetable matter, right? So, and they have canines that are deeply rooted, very big fangs, man, and they're deeply rooted in their gums too. So, there may be more than one reason that God gave creatures big
yeah,
fangs like that. He may have given them for self-defense,
yeah,
for mating purposes, to fend off another, like, male lions fight each other over the woman, right? So, who knows?
but
I mean, there might be more to this
baboons,
picture.
baboons
Creates a
like us
problem
and
with the
Neff,
scripture, Neff.
we have our front teeth are our canines and such are pretty sharp, and we have molars in the back that are flat. That's why we're omnivores. We kind of a mixture of the both. We eat meat and veggie. When you see a vegetarian animal, they tend to have flat teeth for chewing and grinding, opposed to the T-Rex having all sharp teeth, which is made
Like
pretty much for
hippopotamus,
you know.
the hippos
Neff,
are meat
Go ahead,
eaters.
yeah. Go ahead,
in
yeah.
Hippos are
Neff,
meat
Go ahead,
eaters.
yeah.
Neff, in Genesis, it says that they gave man to eat the fruit, but where it says the beast, it doesn't mention the fruit for the beast of the earth. You see, so that sort of makes a sort of a
Well,
little
that
bit of
doesn't
an
mean it
error
wasn't
there.
so. The omission of a statement doesn't mean that something is false. So I'm still not convinced either way on that subject. Speaking of teeth, though, I'll tell you something about humans that's rather interesting. We have fossil skulls of human beings that are extremely large, demonstrating that there were men in this world that were very, very big. I'm talking about 8 to 9, 10, 11 feet tall. Skulls so big you could put your head in it and rattle them around. They exist in a few museums around the world. One in an Inca museum in I think it's Peru or Venezuela. I forgot which. I think Venezuela. And then there's some in New Mexico. Jaws, skulls of human skulls with a jaw that is bigger than any human's jaw. You could find the biggest mountainous man that lives on the earth today, and you could stick the jaw up to his jaw and it would wrap around it. That big. I mean, they're huge, right? And the teeth are big. Okay, so here's what I say is after the flood, the environment changed. The fossil record demonstrates life forms got smaller, weaker on the earth, and probably dumber. This change to the environment caused animals to get smaller in response to the lack of oxygen and the changed atmospheric pressure. And I believe that this is why human beings have so much dental problems today, because our jaws got small. I think a normal human jaw is bigger than what our jaw is today. We should have bigger, boxier jaws. And this would allow our teeth not to get scrunched up and, crowded like so many people have. And I have. My lower teeth are terribly scrunched up. I should have had denture braces when I was 8 or 10 years old. But I think this is due to the flood, that we have so many dental problems today. Look, by the time you're 35 years old, there's most people in this world have to have cavities filled, even if they brush every day. That just seems a lot of dental problems, and I think it's explained by the flood.
What I want to know is how do they clean their teeth back in those days? I mean, it's claimed that humans lived 500-600 years old, and 120 years old was an early death. I mean, how would you even take care of your teeth to that certain point? You know what I mean? Like, how would they not decay by the time you're in your 20s?
Who says they weren't? Obviously, in those
What you
days,
mean?
they
How
would
does the
have less
ancient man
sugar.
take care of his teeth?
In those days, they would have less readily available sugar as we have around today. No sweets, no
Yeah, you're
less
really
bread.
soft. Can you turn your mic up a little, please?
Just turn up your mic a little bit.
Actually, that's what happens when I record it and I want my voice to be enabled. It becomes lower like this.
I can barely hear you, ER.
Never mind, I didn't say anything too important.
Actually, Eel kind of made a decent point. He says there wasn't as much sugar available back then as there is today. I mean, yeah, if you suggest that people are going around eating candy all day, fine, but we have toothbrushes, dentists, uh, plenty of good tools and access to things that will keep our teeth in tip top. What do they have back then? I know the Cambodians back in the day chewed on some. It's like it's almost like tree bark kind of a thing. It almost looks like a cinnamon stick. If you ever see what a cinnamon stick looks like, something like along those lines. They call it the Cambodian toothbrush. But yeah, I wonder what they did way back then.
And by the way,
I don't
they
know.
also had a dentist back then. I mean, 2000 years ago, they had people doing dental work on other people.
Did they have filler to fill in cavities? Did they have a drill to drill out teeth and fill them with liquid with silver or whatever? I don't even know what goes in there. I've only had whoa, that's crazy. I've only had one or two fillings. That was the white pasty stuff. It was never like a deep fill to care my teeth. Yeah, we are.
Well,
We're
I
off
think
topic.
the fossil record supports my idea because it does demonstrate that life forms that exist today were once massive in their comparison in the past, and many of them, including insects, mammals, marsupials, tremendous size in the past, and now they're much far smaller. So these gigantic varieties are now dead; they're extinct. I think that supports my idea about man getting smaller, and if man got smaller, his jaw would get smaller and his teeth would get crowded. That I find validity in that thinking. Maybe you don't, but it seems to work for me.
But wouldn't the teeth also get smaller?
I don't know. Possibly. Somewhat, maybe. Maybe not small enough.
Oh, if you was looking at the horse and things like that, they've been getting larger, not smaller.
Yeah, but on the other hand, the horses are bred by men, so you could say that we are fighting the nature.
There is a fossil. I have heard. I won't claim it. I've heard that there is a fossil of a horse that was tremendous in size compared to the modern horse. I know that deer were tremendous in size compared to the present. There was an example of a deer species that was once, oh man, huge. You think a moose is big? This thing is way bigger than a moose. I mean, humongous. Like as tall as an elephant, this kind of thing. Just are very roughly so. Not much different. Maybe a little shorter than an elephant. Humongous deer existed in the past. I mean, massive. And this is true for so many species.
Yeah, there's the giant sloth as well. That's the incredible size.
Oh yes, a couple of tons. Yeah.
However, you could take that argument in a different direction. I mean, let's take for example computers. Computers used to be a lot bigger 20, 30, 50 years ago, and they became a lot smaller. And you could say that smaller is better. Smaller is more complex, more refined, more fine, more in tune with its function. So maybe getting smaller is actually getting better.
Well, maybe not. Maybe with animals, smaller is weaker. That's for sure.
The PCs were smaller. Machines got bigger.
Smaller means better survival. I mean, look at the survivability of ants and
not necessarily. What if it
compared to elephants and larger animals?
What if it needs the strength? The size is beneficial to it because the strength provides it a better ability to survive. Maybe because the trees were bigger in the past, an animal that feeds on like a beaver would need to be bigger and stronger to chew through trees. In fact, beaver in the fossil record are tremendous in size. There are beavers that weighed like 100, 150, 200 pounds. They're nowhere near that big now. 30, 20, 30, 40 pounds. Many varieties of creatures that were giant in the past. They're very small today. Dragonflies had a wingspan of 5 feet. They found them in the fossil record. 5-foot wide dragonfly. You have to ask yourself, why don't you see that in museums? Where is that fossil? There's a number of them that have been found. You can see a fossil of a dragonfly on the internet, easily find it. It's 2 feet wide. But why don't they put these things in museums? You go to your local museum of natural history and see if you find any of these gigantic creatures. I bet there are very few museums in this world that actually display these things. In fact, probably less now than in the past. And I think that's because evolutionists don't want you to realize that animals were bigger, stronger, and healthier in the past. because this points to the flood of Noah. And so this kind of information is just kind of quietly put away.
Yeah, but couldn't it also be to do with more oxygen on the Earth at the time? Also, the moon was closer, which would affect the Earth's gravity. It was a lot closer, at least twice as big as what it is now. That's how close the moon was.
No,
Yeah, but that
why
doesn't go against the flood model in any way. That, if anything, might support the flood model. I mean, oxygen content and atmospheric pressure reducing would definitely cause animals to get smaller and weaker. I mean, they've actually demonstrated this in a laboratory where you can take, they've taken piranha that were 6 inches long and put them in a tank and increased the pressure on the water and the oxygen content in the tank. And guess what? They get foot-long piranha that weigh 8 to 9 pounds. I mean, you know, this has been repeated. There was a Japanese scientist who grew a cherry tomato plant inside a barometric pressure chamber. He fed in 33% more oxygen and increased the atmospheric pressure. This thing produced cherry tomatoes, the size of a baseball. It grew to such height that they moved it to a shopping mall in Montreal, Canada, where it grew to a height of 12 feet and produced 7,000 baseball-sized cherry tomatoes. So increasing the atmosphere.
That is when the plant age, that'd be carbon for the tomato plants.
Carbon? Well, no, oxygen is what they believe is the cause for it. The atmospheric pressure and the oxygen. Because when it grew the plant from a tomato seeds inside the barometric chamber to a height where it had to come out of the chamber because it was getting too tall, you know, it got 3.5, started growing 4 feet tall, hitting the top of it, he had to take it out. But it continued to grow to such a tremendous size, it grew 12 feet tall.
They're doing the method to this day. They're using the method to this day. They create these tents where they grow the plants in for growing food, and they pump carbon into it, and the plants are and the fruit are a lot bigger than growing them outside, and they're using this to this very day.
Okay, but that doesn't discredit the fact that increasing atmospheric pressure and or oxygen will also cause the same effect.
The thing with the oxygen being pumped in, I mean, plants don't, they don't need oxygen. Okay.
I meant CO2, yeah. No, I meant atmospheric pressure. It wasn't oxygen. It was oxygen that they gave to increase the oxygen content to the piranha fish, and they grew to immense size. Instead of palm size, like the average piranha, some piranha species can get up to a foot long, but these were 6-7 inch piranha, and they grew them in a laboratory. It was Carl Baum, who's an creationist, I believe a scientist as well, and him and his colleagues grew them in a tank that grew to almost like a foot long and weighed 7 to 9 pounds. From palm-sized piranha, and this by increasing the water oxygen, you know.
If I can get a few words here. First of all, there are several issues about this thing. Let's go with the simple thing first. Plants, tomato plants and all plants, they need oxygen to breathe, to live. Now, true, plants can use carbon dioxide to make oxygen, but they need oxygen in order to function. They don't need carbon dioxide in order to function. They use carbon dioxide to make sugar, and then they use the sugar to make other things. But if you provide a plant with oxygen and sugar, it doesn't really need carbon dioxide. Now, about those piranhas...
Okay, good point, yeah.
Now, I don't know exactly what they did with the piranhas, but for example, what could be an easy way to explain it is if it was for several generations. If they had the piranhas in the tank with the high oxygen for several generations, and they bred larger piranhas that would otherwise not be able to survive, that also is possible and interesting. Of course, I'm not saying that one generation would not be enough. It is possible that under the right conditions, with enough food and oxygen and whatnot, piranhas could grow larger if nothing stops them.
Yeah, I see your point, but that also, again, the first generation that they did were affected in that way by that. So is evidence of it. I'll say one more thing, is they have found fossilized tree sap, they call amber, right? And there are bubbles in these things a lot of times. They have actually drilled into these bubbles, extracted them, run them through a Hewlett-Packard spectrometer machine, spectroanalysis, whatever, gas machine, whatever it's called, and found out that these air bubbles that are found in fossilized tree sap have 30 to 2 or 3% more oxygen than the current atmosphere. So that also supports and also the atmosphere, the rocks of the Earth are highly oxidized. So that also would imply the Earth once had more oxygen than the present.
Yeah, but the other point they need to make is that the way the world was and it is now, that we need plants to take in CO2 and to give out oxygen for the breathing animals. So I don't think that part would have been any different.
Just real quick, there's a park near my house here that there's a few ponds there, and in these ponds, if you watch and wait a while, you'll see these goldfish that are about a foot long. And I don't know. I mean, usually goldfish are what about an inch and a half long most. These things are at least a foot long and huge. They probably weigh about 5, 6 pounds. Maybe not even that much. But yeah, I mean, they grew naturally in that pond. Yeah, they're goldfish for sure, yo. Actually, I questioned it. I was like, what the hell? Those aren't goldfish. They don't grow that big. And my friend took care of his goldfish, cleaned the water, this and that, this and that. And his goldfish got pretty damn big, man.
I'll say this: it's generally accepted by geologists today that the Earth did have, in fact, more oxygen in the past. Well, I don't know. They would support my idea, at least.
There was a stage where the Earth also went through where there was a lot of CO2, as much as there is today, which the anti-global warmist people use to argue against the global warming theory. So there was also a time with high levels of CO2.
Here's a link I'm posting that talks about this. That it's observed, and this is one of the reasons why they think so, that the Earth had more oxygen in the past than today. They may or may not be right, I don't know, but they're acknowledging that the Earth had more oxygen in the past, and you could find lots of resources for this.
Yeah, no, eel. They weren't. Sorry, turtle. They weren't koi fish. They were goldfish for sure. And I just did some research quickly, and goldfish can get up to 16 inches apparently and live up to 15 years. So they were definitely goldfish, 100%.
I used to keep goldfish,
Yeah, pretty much.
and I used to make.
Answers.
Right. I used to keep goldfish, and I used to make sure that the water was very oxygenated, and they used to grow pretty large. So, you know, and someone had gave me some goldfish, and they had them for a couple of years, and they weren't growing all that big, and they gave them to me, and the next time they saw the fish, they was twice as big, and he couldn't understand why. So I told him that oxygenate the water a lot, and that's how they grow.
Yeah, turtle. Koi fish can get up to almost 2 feet at max, but goldfish max around 16 inches or so.
There's a link I just posted to National Academy Press that states they say the atmosphere of the Earth increased in oxygen to a certain age, and then about 5 million years ago there was significantly higher oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere than today, and then it's been dropping ever since. So their idea about the Earth gaining oxygen, that's completely fallacious in my opinion. That's based on uniformitarianism. But the fact that the Earth's atmosphere, according to them, in their imagined 5 million years ago, had more oxygen than today, that part is true. I disagree with the 5 million years ago, but their observation about the past level of oxygen is acknowledged generally by scientists around the world.
It's not hard to believe, Neff, at all. I mean, that sort of statement. I mean, it's not, there was more oxygen back in the day. Okay, yeah, I can understand that. But to say that after a flood, the oxygen, depleted in some sense, and they just go into the water. What is it that happened?
No, I can explain why.
Sure.
In fact, I don't know that anyone else holds this opinion. Dr. Walt Brown might hold this also. This is my personal opinion. I believe personally that when the Earth split open, the water that ejected from it at supersonic speed with incredible viscosity became a superfluid, and as it shot into out of the Earth's atmosphere, some of it escaped because it was moving so fast and it was so hot that it at first, as it cooled, of course, going through the atmosphere, but as it passed through the atmosphere of the Earth and entered outer space, that this jet of water spraying into outer space dragged some of the oxygen from the Earth's atmosphere away from the Earth into outer space, where it's been lost to the Earth because it was moving at thousands of miles per hour and it exceeded the escape velocity for the Earth like the water did, and therefore it's permanently lost to the Earth's atmosphere. That's my personal belief. I can't prove it with science. That's just what I believe.
Saying so, then we must. Are we losing oxygen every time a shuttle goes into space?
Probably very well. No, I don't know. Not unless I would say probably no, because maybe for a brief period of time until gravity could pull it back, but the rocket is not exceeding the escape velocity of the Earth because it's got a rocket on it. See, it can thrust its way out. It's not like shooting a rock into space with enough velocity for it to leave the Earth permanently. It's got a rocket, so it's got a cheat. See.
Okay, Nephilim, but if what you're saying is true, not only oxygen was lost that way, but also nitrogen and carbon dioxide, and actually air, as it is, was lost in your theory there, and that means the oxygen concentration would not have changed, because all the air, as in the different parts it had in the atmosphere, were lost equally. So you would not have less oxygen concentration because of the water coming out, like you said.
Well, I don't know that that's true or not. I mean, the atmospheric pressure and oxygen content would have lowered, so you'd have to really maybe figure that out, with some mathematics. I'm not sure that just thinking that makes it so. I see your point, but I don't think that's necessarily valid just on the surface level. It might require mathematics to demonstrate that. And it might require mathematics to demonstrate what I say. I fully acknowledge that.
Why do you need that theory of the water leaving the Earth and going into space? What is the point of having that theory? I mean, I can't see the reason why.
Well, because I believe that science is correct when they say that the atmospheric, the oxygen content of the Earth has been reduced. I mean, it's agreed upon by the preponderance of, geologists and climatologists in the world that the Earth once had far more oxygen, up to about 32 or 3% more oxygen in the past than today. Something caused it to lose that oxygen. What could have caused it to lose so much oxygen by the beginning of, civilization? And I'm talking about it just today. I mean, they study plants and animals that existed, in 1800s and the 1500s, medieval times, and they've determined that there wasn't as much oxygen in the earth, throughout man's history, since civilization, than there was at some point in the they call it very, very distant past, 500 million years ago. So I attribute it to the time of the flood, and Again, I think my idea about what happened is valid, but that's just my opinion. I can't demonstrate it with science. I can demonstrate there was a flood with science. I can't demonstrate that the atmospheric pressure reduced and oxygen content reduced because of the flood with science. Dr. Walt Brown says he thinks he can, though.
Now that I agree with your idea of a worldwide flood, I would like, I think that's where Peeperin is also trying to move toward, to say that you don't need jets of water escaping Earth in order to have that. For example, what you could go by is saying that before the flood we had a tropical Earth that was very mild and comfortable for many plants, and after the flood we have a lot more water, the sea is 70% of the planet, we have less trees, less plants, and therefore we have less oxygen because of that. You don't need jets of water.
Well, that's possible too. Yeah, I'm sure that figures in, because the flood would have killed off all the vegetation on the earth temporarily, and it would have had to have grown back. That would have created a lack of production. I don't know that would actually reduce the oxygen, though. How would it reduce it? See, that would be a pause in its production, but not necessarily a reduction of it.
Yeah, but then there's also the belief that there was waters above in space, in the expanse, which come down and was a part of the flooding of the Earth. So wouldn't that have made an effect on it?
Suppose.
I mean, because the extra water had to come from somewhere, and I wouldn't have thought there would have been enough clouds, even if it was chock-a-block full of clouds, to have flooded the Earth. So the extra water had to come from somewhere, even though that in the Bible it says that the Earth was moved to give up some water, but I don't believe even underground there would have been enough water to flood the Earth. So the extra water would have had to come from outside the Earth, from space.
I don't think so myself, because the Bible says that it rained for 40 days and nights, and I don't think 40 days and nights of rain is going to be enough, even if it's torrential. I don't see that. It might have raised the ocean levels, 5 or 10 feet, but man, you would need one heck of a lot of water to flood the earth, even if the pre-flood earth had no high mountains and only rolling hills, low mountains, and the continents were far flatter. I still don't see that as a mechanism to produce that much water. I believe the vast majority of the water came from within the earth, and the rains simply contributed to it to a minor degree. That's my personal opinion. Dr. Walt Brown sees that way too.
Okay,
it does. The Bible does speak about the water in the expanse that was above the waters, which is what was not talking about the clouds. It was talking about water around the earth, and so I mean that would be a place for the extra water to come down when the expanse come down as well, and the Bible sort of states that.
Yeah, I agree that it does, and I agree that happened. I just don't personally think that 40 days of rain, even if torrential, like a monsoon rain, could possibly contribute enough to flood the earth.
Oh no,
maybe
it wouldn't have come down like rain.
But
it wouldn't have come down like rain. It would just come down, which would explain why there was mammoths that died instantly with food in their mouth and things like that, and frozen on the spot. Which would explain that.
Yeah.
Try to explain.
Well, also water ejecting.
If I may add a few things here, actually, first of all, if you say that you had a constant rain for 40 days and 40 nights of, let's say, 3 inches of rain, I'm not sure exactly how massive that would be, but 3 inches of rain for 40 days and 40 nights will give you 10 feet of water covering the entire planet, because it was raining 3 inches of rain everywhere. So that would be a lot. And second, if you want to know what happened to all the oxygen, something that rots, if it's a body or a plant or anything that rots, takes away oxygen from the environment, from the atmosphere. So if you had things that drown and die and rot away for the next few 10, I don't know, 100 years, I don't know how much, they would absorb oxygen from the atmosphere, and because you have less trees around, you will have less oxygen being reproduced. So that could be an explanation for less oxygen without jets of water leaving the earth.
Well, I see your point, but here's what I think about that. Again, I don't think the rain could have, even though the Bible says the fountains of the heavens were opened. I believe that it means that the water that came down was indeed great. I just don't see it as enough water to flood the earth. I think the majority of it had to have and did come from within the earth. Second, partly because of the fact that when we examine the coasts, the edges of the continental plates of the earth, it does appear that the ocean floors have sunk, and this would be to fill the vacated space left behind by the water ejecting out of the earth. So that would have implied one hell of a lot of water coming from within the earth, the majority, I believe. Secondly, although I don't believe a lot of what is said about the geology of the earth by evolutionist scientists, they acknowledge that the earth was once had an ice age, right? And they think there was more than one. I personally think there was only one, and it was caused by the flood. I don't see that if the water that came down that caused the flood was primarily from this canopy of water surrounding the earth, then the ice age should have affected all parts of the earth and not just predominantly the upper and northernmost hemispheres. You know, the ice sheets wouldn't have been just over most of North America and most of the southern hemisphere. It would have been everywhere. There would have been in Venezuela and Mexico ice sheets 10 feet, 50 feet thick there as well. But that's not what geologists believe have happened. So you can interpret what evolutionist scientists say and then read through it, what you see, to see the flood of Noah. Okay, so so I don't think I think the fact that the ice age covered predominantly the upper portion of the northern hemisphere and southern hemispheres, the lower part of it, is evidence that this ice for some reason came down mostly on that area of the earth near the poles, okay, to create the polar ice caps for one thing. And I think that is explained by the water ejecting from the earth, going into the stratosphere of the earth and lingering and coming back down as super frozen ice, covering the poles of the earth more than anywhere else because of the magnetic field of the earth. The water would have been dirty water from inside the earth because it carried lots of heavy minerals from within the earth. So carrying minerals like iridium and iron and whatnot, this would have helped draw this water spray towards the poles and covered them and created the ice caps. And so that would seem to fit my idea, my model. To why, the ice age existed and why we have the frozen mammoths.
Well, with the North Pole, if that melted, it would it would be less water because the actual ice is displacing a lot of water than what it really is once it's melted. I mean, it's only the ice that's on land that would create more water as such.
I'm not sure I understood that. Could you repeat that, P-Brain?
Well, if you melt ice in a glass, the water level doesn't rise. So that means that where you're saying about this ice going there, that it's not creating extra water.
If it came from within the earth, it would.
It's only ice on land. It's only ice on land that would create higher sea levels. But the actual ice in water would not create extra sea levels. Probably by 1%. That's all, because the amount of ice above the water.
But not all of the water went into the upper atmosphere. I mean, stratosphere. It was a spray. Like if you put your thumb over a garden hose, it turns into or bend the end of a garden hose and point it straight up, it fans out. So that's what would have happened. The water would have fanned, and some of it would have escaped the earth, and the greatest portion of it probably would have come back down on the earth as rain. You know, at the onset of the flood, and then as the crack widened, you've just got a fountain that's not reaching the upper atmosphere anymore. It's just a giant fountain flooding the earth. You see.
Yeah, but what I'm going to get to, is that if all the ice on the earth melted, there would still not be enough water to flood the whole earth. So it would indicate that the land has risen and not sunk, as you previously said. So
no, I don't see that at all. No, see
the
water within the earth, right? From within the earth. So this is water coming from inside the earth, coming out upon the surface of it. That's why the earth flooded.
Let me get a few words here.
Yeah, but even if all the water. Sorry, go on.
Okay.
Go for it.
First of all, what Neff is talking about is a little similar to what is known as the hydroplate theory. If you look that up, it might clear up some of the things that he's saying. He's saying that there was water beneath the ground, and as the water came out, the ground went down by how much water was in there. So let's say there were 100 feet of water underground, and so the ground went down 100 feet, and the water was able to allow to go up. Another part of that theory says that most of the mountains before the flood were much lower, so you didn't need that much water to cover them. And also, today you have a lot of ice on Antarctica, I think it's called. If you melt that ice, sea level will rise by, maybe not 100 feet, but sea level will rise significantly, flooding many areas of that we have habited today. It will not flood the higher mountains, but by the hydroplate theory, those higher mountains rose as a result of the flood. So that theory sort of covers both ends of it. So how where the water came from and how it could flood the earth.
Something else to consider is. Sorry, PB, go ahead.
I was just saying thank you because that's what I was trying to explain, that the land had to rise and not sink as you previously said.
No, I don't see it that way at all. I see that the earth has split open, and I believe that the waters for the flood came from within the earth and out upon its surface, and the ocean floors sank, but the continents didn't need to rise. There was no need for them to rise. It's estimated by Dr. Walt Brown that approximately half of the water that's in the oceans today came from within the earth. So that's one heck of a lot of water.
Neff, what I'm trying to say is that there's not enough water on the earth to flood the whole earth. So the land the land had to have risen after. Like Mount Everest is well above, which it might not have been. So there's just definitely not enough water to flood the earth.
There is.
And so
if you level
after the flood, when the earth was flooded, the land would have had to risen for Noah to even to get onto a mountain. If you're going to believe the flood story.
Well, I don't believe that. No, and there is enough water on the earth to flood the earth. If you leveled the continents flat, like if they were dough and you went over them with a giant rolling pin and smoothed them flat, they would go under.
Exactly. This is what I'm saying. So,
right.
So
that's what I'm saying.
Now.
The land. No, not the land necessarily risen. Parts of the land may have risen, but the whole continent, I would say, no. I'd say there's some truth in what you say. Areas would have risen, and the mountains rose during the flood, but not the entire continent. I don't believe the entire continents rose.
Okay.
We just may disagree on that.
Okay, if I can, on P's side, what he's saying is basically something like this. Okay, so let's say there was that big flood, all the earth is covered by water for a year. How could the mountains rise at that point in time? I mean, if the entire earth is covered with water, where would the water... How can you have mountains rising out of nothing?
Well, that's easily explained. Before I tell you, talk about that, let me tell you quickly about this. The continents of the Earth are connected by land bridges, which are now underwater. And even evolutionist scientists agree that this is how animals got to certain species of animal got to Australia and such, and why there is dinosaurs. There's actually been a sauropod dinosaur fossil found on top of a mountain in the Antarctic. This is an animal that lived in a tropical environment, and it's found on top of a mountain. Obviously, the creature could not climb mountains. It's a sauropod. It has a flattish foot, a foot like an elephant, okay? And it's a large animal. It didn't climb that mountain. That mountain rose with that dinosaur dead on it already, okay? I believe during the flood. So, and there are civilizations, there has been civilization found, I mean, man-made construction, housing, whatnot, found in various places off the continents of the earth, off the coast of Spain, Greece, Italy, Japan, whatnot, which are now completely underwater by 10, 30, 50 feet. And I believe this is explained by, and the Bible tells us in the days of Peleg, the continents were divided. I think what this means is, after the Ice Age was created by the water, the superfrozen ice from low orbit came raining down on the Earth, drawn to the magnetic poles, creating the Ice Age. That ice started melting away rapidly immediately after the flood, and has been melting away since. And it's been demonstrated that the northern ice and south poles are in fact dwindling. They're at an alarming rate, okay? So, and in fact, in Glacier National Park in Montana, at the turn of the 20th century, there was like 200 glaciers in Glacier National Park. Today, there are 22. That's all. So when these people say the Earth is not warming, I say bullcrap. It's a proven fact. Okay, but aside from that, these land bridges got buried as the ice began to melt right after the flood and turned into water, rising the ocean floors even further by a relatively small measure, separating the continents permanently from each other by burying these land bridges. You can see these land bridges with Google Earth if you want to look at the ocean floors with Google Earth. This explains the sauropod dinosaur on the top of a mountain. Now, how did mountains rise? Well, they rose during the flood. It doesn't matter if they're underwater or not. If you imagine that the continents of the Earth grinding their way across the crust of the Earth, okay, at some point they're going to meet resistance, right? And that's what happened. They met resistance, and because the continents are so heavy, there's so much mass of material behind their movement, the energy, the inertia was tremendous, okay? So as they meet resistance, like if you laid a sheet out on a table and pushed it, the sheet is near the end is going to start buckling and coming up. Okay, that's what happened to the continents. That's how the mountains rose, and the Earth was covered with water at the time that this took place, and the oceans actually rose out of the water as the water was receding. So it was two things happening at once. The mountains are rising, and the ocean waters are receding at the same time. Okay, and this is one evidence that helps us verify this is the fact that there are many mountains in the Earth that have sheared tops. They're flat. And there are even mountain ranges in the Earth where you can see a craggy sharp top mountain, a craggy sharp top mountain, a craggy sharp top mountain, and a flat top mountain. Then a craggy sharp top mountain and a craggy sharp top mountain. Okay, why is this mountain flat topped? It doesn't fit the uniformitarianist geology. There's no explanation for why this mountain is sheared flat on this top, while all the others are craggy. But this is explained beautifully by the flood, by a strong oceanic current that was taking place during the flood. As that mountain was rising, that current, it rose into that current, coming up into it, and that water current just washed that soft sediment away and flattened off that mountain before it could come up, dry out, and harden. See, that's a very powerful evidence for the flood, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, but not all mountains are sedimentary rock.
The vast majority are. Not all, no. But even if granite is pushed up out of the earth, that fits the flood model perfectly. The flood model states that the mountains rose during the flood because of the continents grinding their way across the crust of the earth, which is exactly what evolutionists believe. The only difference is that a creationist says it happened in a year to 2 years, right? Well, the evolutionist says it happened over a period of 350 million years. We believe the same thing, except for the water. The evolutionist believes in how long it took to happen. The evolutionist doesn't believe the whole world was flooded at one time together. and the mountains rose out of water. They don't believe it rose out. They do believe that most of them rose out of water, and that's, you can't argue with that because they're covered with sea creature fossils to their peaks. Okay, so they were covered by water one time. The difference is that the evolutionist doesn't believe the Earth was globally flooded, and they don't believe that the flood that these mountains rose over a period of a year to a year and a half. They believe it took hundreds of millions of years.
Well, I tend to believe that it was a localized flood where mankind and the Nephilim were, because it says in the inhabited earth, meaning where mankind was at the time.
No, it doesn't say inhabited. It says whole earth. It says whole earth. The Hebrew word is
The
Hebrew word is earth. It says whole earth. Whole earth.
Yeah,
whole earth.
Something I've been looking into, which it could be in translation where a part of it has been lost, where it wasn't the whole earth, and this is something I've been looking into, whether it could possibly be just a localized flood on one part of a continent sort of thing, where Noah was and where the Nephilim were.
You're just, I think, denying Scripture when you do that, bro. I hate to say that, but I think you are. I mean, let's look at that passage a second, okay? Let's look at that passage. I'm going to pull it up and look at it with a concordance. Okay.
Okay.
This won't take but a second. Okay. Okay. Genesis 8, 9. Okay. Let me look at that with this concordance now. Genesis 8, verse 9. Okay. The Hebrew word is waters were on the face of the whole. This, I'm going to paste this into the text, okay? This is from the concordance. Okay, that's the Hebrew for it. Whole, properly the whole. That means the entirety of, all of. Doesn't mean partial, it means all of. The whole earth. See? So the Bible tells us that the waters were on the face of the whole earth. That means all of it, not part of it, but all of it. See, so that scripture clearly tells us the entire earth was globally flooded. And in fact, Peter, I believe it is, or was it Romans? No, it's Romans 1, tells us that by this they are willingly ignorant of, that the earth was flooded, and there's nothing in there about a local flood. It implies the earth was globally flooded. The Bible also says that all life that had the breath of life, all life that breathes, perished in the flood. All of it. So the Bible is quite clear that the flood has to be global according to the Scriptures.
Okay, but it's just something that I was going to look in further to, because the simple fact is I've heard it said, people saying that it was just a localized flood, and that. So
I know there's a lot of people that make that argument.
Yeah. Because it does raise problems. It's like you got kangaroos, you got strange animals in Australia, which I think you've heard someone say that they're totally different to other creatures on the earth, where they seem to be localized animals, the way they are, like the duck-billed platypus, the kangaroo, the way it does its young, and there's quite a lot of strange animals in Australia that you don't seem to get in other parts of the world, which seems to be as if they didn't have the flood.
Right. I brought up the reptiles too. Like I know a little bit about herpetology. You know, I guess rusted's not here, but the Australian stakes, large constrictors, like the scrub pythons and the amethystine pythons, the carpet pythons, the green tree pythons, all are egg layers. The same would be true in Asia and Africa. Now when you get to the New World, South America, North America, all the large boas are live birth. Argentine boas, red tails, anacondas, which are technically a boa, dumerals, boas. There's a lot of species, and they're all. So I'm going to study that more. Like I know a little bit about the localized fauna rather than flora. I know Neff was talking about flora yesterday a little bit. As far as the animal life, I may study it a little bit more and see that certain areas seem to have similarities within the species that are localized to different areas. But like all I can really comment on is the reptiles, though.
Well, speciation it doesn't produce evolutionary change because it doesn't change structure. Varieties within a kind is not evidence of evolution because breeds of dog don't are all still fully dog. No new structures, no new organs, nothing at all. So the same thing is true of the animals that you speak of. Varieties of them don't demonstrate evolution in any way. It's just breeding and gene expression that doesn't promote evolution in any way. The existence of certain creatures in certain parts of the world, I can see the atheist argument against that, but the thing I believe is I think that there are certain times where a creationist just has to say, okay, I admit that I believe that, even though I can't verify it with science. I can't demonstrate to you why it would happen. I don't have a problem with that because, in my opinion, evolutionists have to do this constantly to promote evolution. And in my opinion, everything about evolution theory is discredited by science. So if the truth is, evolutionists do this far more than creationists, but they'll pull the strings of a Christian if he says, well, I have no really sound explanation for that. Although there are Christians who provide explanations for it. But they'll pull your strings and say, ha ha ha, but hey, I can do the same thing to evolutionists. Ha 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 ha. Everything about evolution theory is discredited. So what are you talking about?
Okay. So the point about the dogs, the species are different enough where they cannot procreate, they cannot mate and produce viable offspring. I'm not sure if
because of size.
No. No.
I think you're wrong. I think the only size is the only thing that prevents a Chihuahua and a Great Dane from breeding. I think you could in vitro fertilize a Great Dane with Chihuahua sperm and get a dog.
Right. So yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay, I misunderstood your point. You are correct on that. My point is that the species of snakes that I was referring to in my example, and marsupials also, in what P-Brain I think was mentioning, was that they're different enough. Not the dogs. I'm sorry, I misunderstood me. You're totally correct on the dogs. But that's why the comparison didn't work the same, because it wasn't different kinds of the same species as it would have been in dogs. We're actually talking about varieties of animals that are different enough that they're not able to mate, they're not able to produce viable offspring, but they seem to localize in different areas. That's interesting to me. And like I said, I can only comment the snakes. I can't, and the marsupials is interesting. I can't really make comments on other type of fauna.
Well, I think that's explainable by kinds still. And in fact, I think it's evidence against evolution because it demonstrates a limitation to variety, and therefore puts a cog in the wheel of this process of endless variety that will produce morphological change and yield new kinds from extant kinds, new genus from extant genus. So that demonstrates to me that there is a limitation to the genetic code that was perfect in the beginning, and it's experiencing entropy and changes to allele frequency over time because of increased populations, and over time is turning off some genes and a permanent loss of genetic information, and this information is no longer expressed, and this creates a genetic problem for let's say a horse and a mule, or do I have that right? A horse and a donkey create a donkey. Is that right? Or horse and a monk? Horse and a mule create a donkey. Okay. All right. Right. Okay. No longer compatible. Physiologically, they're compatible. A horse and a donkey could breed, but it's genetics that prevents it. Okay. Their genetics doesn't work together anymore. Okay. So they can't reproduce. This is, to me, a limitation caused by what a process that evolutionists claim is evolutionary, a mechanism for evolution, which is changes to allele frequency over time, which is actually the opposite of that. It's devolution. It's causing all of the life forms on the earth to go slowly extinct. So when evolutionists say that the loss of the ability to breed creates a new species that's separate genetically from its parents, and then therefore this population is now evolving into something else, I say there's no evidence that it's ever going to become anything else morphologically, and there's evidence that it cannot, and all this is an end to the potential for evolution process, as a matter of fact.
First, just a little thing about mules. Sometimes, in some cases, a mule is fertile. So saying that donkeys and horses are different kinds because they cannot have viable offspring is wrong, because sometimes their offspring can be fertile. So in that sense, you could say that donkeys and horses should be considered as the same species, because
well, I would agree they're the same kind. I don't know if you'd want to label them species or not. That's up to the evolutionists. They love to taxonomically organize things and call everything that's a species. Even if a butterfly has a different color or pattern to its wings, but it's structurally identical to another, they proclaim it a new species. So, and speciation is really a very difficult thing to define. Evolutionist scientists admit that they have difficulty or find it impossible to define what constitutes a species. So,
exactly. So that's why
speciation.
That's why when asked about what causes speciation, my answer is when someone decides to give it a different name. When someone decides to give an animal a different name, it's a new species, because any other explanation is just not good enough.
Well, that works for me. I don't mind the process of speciation. If it is in fact a real process, and so in such that we can point to one animal and say this is clearly a different species from this one, although there's varieties within that same kind, I don't have a problem with that. That doesn't demonstrate evolution in the slightest way, so it's not a problem for creationists whatsoever. Because there's no structural design change, to speciation. You can get more muscularity in the legs of a damselfly because of genetic mutation, for example. But that's not new muscles. It's new muscle tissue. More of the same. The same muscles are now larger. I can do the same thing to myself in a gym, working out for 6 months, come out of the gym, and I have not changed structurally in my design one iota. I just have more muscle mass. That doesn't evolve me one bit toward becoming any new kind of life form.